Good morning and welcome. Let's begin with a notable quote from John Hattie, who challenges educators with two simple words: know thy impact. In other words, the most effective teachers are constantly asking, how do I know my students learned what I intended them to learn, and what will I do next? That mindset is at the heart of everything we'll discuss today. Today is all about being intentional, not adding more to your plate. It's about making the planning you're already doing even more impactful. When we plan with purpose, we teach with confidence, respond to students more effectively, and create more opportunities for every student to be successful. That's what today is all about. Before we jump into today's learning, let's take a minute to frame our lesson. Here's our know. Planning, instruction, evidence, PLCs, and coaching are interconnected parts of one instructional system designed to maximize student learning. And here's our show. By the end of today's session, you'll be able to explain how those pieces work together and identify one instructional practice you'll implement to improve student outcomes. Now, as we move through today's learning, I want you to keep these two questions in mind. What am I learning? That's our know. How will I show I've learned it? That's our show. Throughout the session, I'll intentionally connect our learning back to these targets, and at the end, your exit ticket will be your opportunity to show your understanding. That's the power of know and show. It isn't just something we post on the board. It frames the lesson, gives students a purpose for learning, and provides a clear target for success from the very beginning. Everything we're doing this year points back to one vision: improving student learning through stronger Tier 1 instruction. On this slide, you'll notice a continuum of 6 strategic moves that will support this vision. Habit 1 is building strong relationships by creating a classroom culture where every student feels supported. Habit 2 is increasing Tier 1 instruction by delivering well-planned and highly effective lessons. Habit 3 is maximizing learning with bell-to-bell instruction by planning for and protecting every minute of instruction. Habit 4 is increasing grade-level rigor by challenging students with meaningful learning that promotes critical thinking and mastery. Habit 5 is engaging students by making learning relevant. And finally, Habit 6 is being consistent in holding high expectations and following through with excellence in everything we do. These aren't 6 separate initiatives. They're the habits that define excellent teaching. Each one builds on the next to create classrooms where every student has access to high-quality learning every day. This year, you'll notice 2 important instructional shifts. First, all lesson plans will be created in Common Planner using our district lesson plan template. This gives every teacher one consistent place to plan, organize, and document instruction. Second, every lesson will include a clear know and show, what students need to know and how they'll demonstrate their learning. Together, these 2 shifts help us plan with greater purpose, increase instructional clarity, and keep student learning at the center of every lesson. Let's begin by looking at our new and exciting planning expectations for this year. As you have already heard, all teachers will use Common Planner for lesson planning. Teachers will submit individual lesson plans using the Godly ISD planning template. This template features 7 critical components: the standards, the no-show, a bell ringer or warm-up activity, the direct teach and model section, which is known as the I do in the gradual release of responsibility model we will be using, the guided practice or we do, the independent practice or you do, and finally, the closure or exit ticket. While the template provides a consistent structure, it's the intentional thinking behind your planning that makes the greatest impact on student learning. At G6, content teams will continue meeting weekly to collaboratively plan using the district-approved scope and sequence, curriculum, and instructional resources. To ensure we're prepared for a strong start each week, lesson plans, including RTI plans, should be completed before you leave on Friday, or the last workday of the week. Planning ahead allows us to spend less time reacting and more time focusing on what matters most: high-quality instruction and student learning. You will have in-depth training on Common Planner this week, and we are excited about the dynamic features it provides teachers, including TEKS tracking and AI capabilities that can support you in generating rigorous seed questions and more. We cannot wait to support you in all that Common Planner has to offer as you plan amazing lessons for your students. The new no-show framework is the foundation of our instructional planning. It will be replacing the fundamental 5 lesson frames, we will, I will, in your planning and on your board. But aside from that, it is not a large step in a different direction, simply an adaptation that we believe will support all learners more effectively. In preparing the no-show, every decision should answer 2 vital questions. What do I want students to know? And how will they show me they've learned it? Once we define the destination, we can design the path that gets them there. The no-show is the student's anchor for their learning that day. So don't just let your no-show simply sit on the board. Use it to launch your lesson. Discuss it with students, make the purpose clear, and revisit it throughout the lesson so they always know what they're learning and what success looks like. Let's jump into lesson planning. This is where great teaching begins. Thoughtful planning creates purposeful instruction, stronger engagement, and better outcomes for every student. Let's start with instructional capacity, because one of the simplest ways to maximize student learning is to maximize instructional time. Bell-to-bell instruction means every minute is planned with purpose and used intentionally. From the opening activity to the final closure, our aim is to keep every student thinking and engaged. We want to maximize our time together so that learning is consistent, intentional, and student-centered. Plan the bell ringer, the no-show delivery, explicit instruction, guided practice, independent practice, and the closing where students will reflect on their learning with evidence. Here's a quick teacher tip. Aggressively monitoring and adjusting instruction throughout the lesson by checking for understanding, responding to misconceptions, and providing support during guided practice and independent practice will ensure that you are moving learning forward, all the way to the bell. Now let's take a look at the lesson cycle. We'll be planning and implementing strong Tier 1 instruction using the gradual release of responsibility model. As we move through planning, modeling, guided practice, and independent application, we intentionally prepare students for success. Modeling and guided practice are critical. They allow us to use exemplars, check for understanding, address misconceptions in real time, and adjust instruction before students practice independently. Strong Tier 1 instruction lives in this lesson cycle. It is the vessel for student success, which is why your district lesson planning template in Common Planner was developed in alignment with this very cycle. It's all working together to support you and your students. Let's discuss an old favorite for a minute. At Godley 6th grade campus, backward design isn't just about planning backwards from the CBA or from the unit test. It's about planning from every opportunity students have to show their learning, including our daily checks for understanding, weekly formatives, and unit summatives. Those pieces work together to tell us what students know and what they still need, so we can adjust instruction before small misunderstandings become larger gaps. We start by identifying the desired results. What do we want students to know, understand, and be able to do? Then we determine the evidence that will tell us if students learned it or not. And finally, we plan the learning experiences that will get them there. We have to be intentional. Every lesson, activity, and assessment should move students closer to the goal, which leads us to more planning. As effective educators, we don't just plan lessons, we plan thinking. To lead students toward deep learning, we must identify the key cognitive moves they need to make. We anticipate their potential struggles and plan the prompts and scaffolds that move their thinking forward, from the first minute to the last. This is very strategic planning, but very important. Teachers must identify the level of thinking needed for the task, plan the moves that will get them there, anticipate possible responses, and be prepared to support students with prompts, scaffolds, and extensions. A clear plan for strong thinking leads to deeper learning. Clear is kind. While a clear plan for how we want students to think is key, making those expectations clear to them is important too. But guess what? Great exemplars don't happen by chance. They are planned. When you select and study an exemplar before teaching, you clarify what success looks like. This roadmap allows you to guide students with precision, helping them visualize the quality we expect in their own work. Now let's analyze the bridge that connects planning a strong lesson and actually delivering a strong lesson. Internalizing the lesson means more than reading tomorrow's plans. It is the act of studying in advance. Start by studying the goal or the show and understanding what students should know and be able to do at the end of the lesson. Analyze the exemplars and identify the key strategies, vocabulary, and moves required. Work the problems, read the passages, conduct the experiments, and test the equipment. Anticipate student thinking by predicting misconceptions and planning how you will respond and support students. Finally, study the instructional moves you will make to meet the goal by the end of the lesson that day. Internalization and preparation gives you the confidence to respond to students' needs instead of simply following a lesson plan. Visualization is our final mental rehearsal. Before the bell rings, take a moment to walk through the flow of your lesson. Picture the transitions, the questions, and the interactions. Consider seating. Plan for students who were out the day before. Adjust for what did not work yesterday. Think of this as a management planning in addition to lesson planning. The simple act of visualizing your day helps us solve tomorrow's challenges before they ever reach the classroom. This is also where you may notice having a few extra minutes to fill before the bell, which allows us the opportunity to circle back to maximizing student learning with bell-to-bell instruction. We've spent time talking about planning because great instruction starts with a great plan. But even the best lesson plan only makes a difference when it's brought to life in the classroom. So now, let's shift our focus from planning the lesson to implementing the plan through strong Tier 1 instruction. Everything we've discussed so far happens before students ever walk into the classroom. Once the lesson begins, it's our instructional moves that bring that planning to life. High-leverage teacher moves, like explicit modeling, guided practice, checking for understanding, and purposeful independent application, turn great planning into great instruction. When we execute these moves with intention, we create learning experiences that lead every student toward mastery. One of the most powerful instructional moves we can make is modeling with an exemplar. An exemplar does more than show students the correct answer. It makes our thinking visible. Think aloud as you model, explain your decisions, and highlight what success looks like. When students understand both the what and the why behind quality work, they're better prepared to think independently and produce high-quality work of their own. Now, we have already talked about planning and studying the exemplars as teachers, but modeling them for the students is where the magic happens. It's not just about the teachers knowing the goal, but the students need to see the end goal as well. Remember, clear is kind. We are not giving them the answers. We are modeling how we want them to think, speak, listen, write, and learn. We show the students what we want. We name it and teach them how to do it. Once we've modeled our thinking, it's time for students to do the cognitive heavy lifting. Productive student talk gives every learner an opportunity to explain, justify, question, and refine their thinking before working independently. As teachers, we should listen just as intentionally as we teach. Those conversations become powerful checks for understanding, helping us identify misconceptions, strengthen Tier 1 instruction, and respond to student needs in the moment. Academic discourse matters and should happen every day in every classroom because it deepens understanding, builds confidence, reveals thinking, and uncovers misconceptions quickly, improves culture, and leads to stronger learning. Productive student talk looks like student-to-student ideas over answers, evidence, reasoning, and responding. Better conversations lead to better learning. Productive student talk helps students develop and refine their ideas. Critical writing gives them the opportunity to organize, deepen, and communicate that thinking. That's why critical writing should happen every day in every classroom. It doesn't have to be a lengthy essay. It can be embedded throughout the lesson or used as a powerful lesson close to capture evidence of learning. The goal isn't simply to complete a writing task, it's to make student thinking visible. When students consistently write to explain, justify, analyze, and reflect, they deepen their understanding, provide evidence of learning, and give us the information we need to respond to their needs. Now that we've intentionally planned for rigorous thinking, we need to know if students actually got there. Every lesson should end with evidence of learning, not just evidence of teaching. Daily checks for understanding and end-of-week formative assessments help us measure student progress, identify misconceptions, and determine our next instructional steps. The evidence students produce should always align with the learning target and the level of thinking we planned. Collecting evidence is only valuable if we use it to improve instruction. Every daily check for understanding, weekly formative assessment, and unit summative should help us answer one question. What's the next best instructional move for my students? Assessment isn't about assigning grades. It's about identifying strengths, uncovering misconceptions, and making timely adjustments to instruction. When we consistently respond to evidence, we strengthen Tier 1 instruction, provide targeted support, and keep students moving toward mastery. Collect, analyze, adjust. As students begin doing the cognitive work, our responsibility is to ensure they're thinking at the level the standard demands. Rigor isn't about making work harder. It's about increasing the quality of thinking. Every student deserves opportunities to analyze, justify, explain, solve, and apply their learning with the appropriate support. Strong Tier 1 instruction maintains high expectations while providing the scaffold students need to be successful. When we consistently raise the level of thinking in every classroom, we reduce learning gaps before they require intervention. So, how do we increase Tier 1 rigor? It starts with intentional planning of challenging, grade-level content that requires students to think deeply, not just complete tasks. From there, we provide meaningful opportunities for practice, monitor learning throughout the lesson, and use real-time evidence to make instructional adjustments that meet students' needs in the moment. Planning leads to instruction, and instruction produces evidence. The question is, what do we do with that evidence? That's where our PLC process begins. Our PLCs work best when everyone comes ready to contribute. Bring your lesson plans, student evidence, and an open mind. Be willing to ask questions, share ideas, celebrate what's working, and problem solve together when it's not. We all bring different experiences and strengths to the table, and that's what makes our team better. Together, we can accomplish far more than any of us could alone. Let's make every PLC a place where great teaching gets even better. Everything we've discussed so far comes together in these weekly PLCs. Throughout the week, you're collecting evidence of student learning through daily checks for understanding and formative assessments. That evidence becomes the foundation of every PLC conversation. Here's a quick look at our weekly PLC workflow. On Monday mornings, analyze your assessment data, identify trends, reflect on student performance, generate questions, and complete your Friday quick check cover page. On Tuesday mornings, submit your assessment data to your facilitator. Coaches and administrators will gather and organize the data so we can better support both you and your students. Wednesdays are dedicated to PLC preparation. Review the agenda, preview the data and instructional focus, plan possible Tier 1 and Tier 2 responses, and determine any materials or support your team may need. Then, every Thursday, we come together as PLC teams to analyze student evidence, identify misconceptions, celebrate successes, and determine our next instructional moves. If you've already retaught a concept after a Friday quick check or another formative assessment, that's exactly what we want. Just be sure to bring new evidence showing the impact of that reteach. In our PLCs, we don't just discuss what we taught, we focus on what students learned. Because when evidence drives the conversation, student learning drives our decisions. PLCs help us identify our next steps, but coaching is what helps us take them. This next part of our instructional system is all about support, not evaluation. Together, we'll learn, practice, reflect, and continue growing so we can have an even greater impact on student learning. We've discussed powerful planning and effective Tier 1 instruction. We've also revisited a consistent and effective framework to guide our weekly PLCs. By grounding our discussions in student evidence and using a clear coaching process, we ensure our time is efficient and impactful. This shared rhythm keeps us focused on one priority: improving learning for every single student. Let's take a look at our coaching process. Coaching is the heart of our continuous improvement. It isn't about evaluation, it's about partnership. The purpose of coaching is to help bridge the gap between professional learning and daily classroom practice. Throughout the year, we'll move through 5 coaching cycles, each centered on a different instructional focus that aligns with our campus goals. Every cycle follows the same consistent process. We'll learn a new instructional strategy. These strategies will be featured in the teacher launchpads, and teachers are asked to preview those strategies and their resources prior to their launch conversations, where you'll identify a personalized goal. In the following weeks, you'll practice that strategy with ongoing support and reflect on the impact it has on student learning in a brief reflection and feedback session. This cycle takes about 4 weeks, and we'll move through 5 of them before the end of March. Coaching isn't about changing everything at once. It's about making one intentional improvement at a time, building confidence through practice, and celebrating growth along the way. Small, consistent changes in teacher practice often lead to the greatest gains in student achievement. You'll never be expected to implement new learning on your own. Coaching conversations, classroom support, PLC collaboration, and instructional resources all work together to help you take your next best step as an educator. In just a moment, I'll introduce the 2 resources that make this coaching process possible: our Teacher Launchpad and the Wildcat Toolbox. Together, they provide the learning, tools, and support you'll need throughout each coaching cycle. The Teacher Launchpad is your roadmap for each coaching cycle. Every cycle begins with a focused set of instructional strategies designed to strengthen a specific area of practice. You'll spend time learning the moves, planning how they'll fit into your classroom, and meeting with your facilitator to set a personalized goal. Over the next 2 weeks, you'll intentionally practice those strategies with coaching support in your classroom before we come back together to reflect, celebrate growth, and identify your next steps. Each cycle builds on the last, creating meaningful growth one strategy at a time. You'll set a personalized goal because great teaching isn't about everyone improving in the same way. It's about every teacher taking their next best step. The Wildcat Toolbox is your practical companion to each coaching cycle. While the Teacher Launchpad helps you focus on what to perfect, the Toolbox provides ready-to-use resources to help you put those strategies into practice. Every other week, you'll receive classroom-ready tools, instructional strategies, templates, examples, and implementation tips that align directly with our current coaching focus. The goal is to spend less time searching for resources and more time intentionally strengthening instruction. Together, the Launchpad and Toolbox provide the learning, support, and practical tools to help every teacher continue growing. Thank you for your time, your commitment, and the care you bring to your students every day. Everything we've discussed today, from intentional planning and rigorous instruction to PLCs, coaching, and continuous growth, is designed with one purpose in mind: helping every student succeed. Remember, meaningful improvement doesn't happen all at once. It happens through small, intentional steps, taken consistently over time. Before you leave, please take a few moments to complete today's exit ticket. Your feedback will help us continue refining our support, and your reflections will help you identify one meaningful next step as we begin this journey together. Thank you for investing in your growth, and more importantly, in the success of our students. Have a wonderful school year.